Have you ever noticed how sometimes silence hurts more than rejection? Like that moment when nobody answers, nobody notices, nobody praises. Does it seem to echo within the soul like a silent scream? It is at this moment that one of the deepest and most dangerous desires of humankind is born, the desire to be approved. Without realizing it, we begin to shape our face, our words, our gestures, everything to fit into the gaze of others. We smile when we want to cry. We agree so as not to disappoint. And we became experts at looking good, even when we're falling apart inside. But what few people realize is that the quest for approval has an invisible price. Every time you live to be seen, a part of you dies hidden. And it is in this space of silence between what you show and what you feel that something inside us starts asking for help. What if I told you that? The Bible speaks directly about this. Who knows how burdensome it is to live trying to please everyone? And maybe what you call neediness is just longing. I miss the only gaze that truly matters, because there's a difference between being loved and being approved. And when you understand that difference, you will discover why God sometimes hides you, not to punish you, but to set you free. Today, you will understand. Why does the world's applause tire you, and God's silence heals you? And when this video is over, maybe you'll never have to explain yourself to anyone again. Have you ever caught yourself smiling just to be accepted? Saying things you didn't mean to say, just to avoid upsetting people? This is how the prison of approval begins, without bars, without walls, but with mirrors. And in every mirror, the reflection of someone trying to be what others expect. We live amidst applause and silence, but we forget what it's like to truly live. Approval is an addiction disguised as kindness. At first, it seems like love. With time, it reveals itself to be emptiness. It's sweet to be noticed, until you realize you need to reinvent yourself every day to stay that way. The soul becomes a prisoner of opinion, and peace comes to depend on a person's perspective. And those who live to be approved die a little every time they are forgotten. The Bible calls this idolatry, because anything that rules the heart instead of God becomes an idol. And today, the most adored idol is the self. We live to be admired, not transformed. And the result is a world full of applause, but empty of purpose. The prison of approval is silent but profound. You may appear free, but you carry invisible chains. They are called neediness, lack, fear of rejection. And while the world applauds you, God is calling you. But the noise is too loud to hear. The loudest noise of the soul is that of those who try to please everyone except the Creator. And one day when the applause ceases, silence will ask, "Who are you when no one is watching?" This is the question God asks the heart that is tired of pretending. Because His love is not an audience, it's a refuge. And whoever enters into this love discovers that approval is just another name for fear. In Eden, the man and the woman were both naked, and nothing shamed them. But when sin entered, shame entered as well. They hid from God, and humanity's first mask was sewn from leaves. Since then, humankind has tried to cover up what it feels and show what it appears to be. And so the desire to be seen, admired, and accepted was born. The need for approval is an echo of separation. We long for the gaze we lost in Eden, the gaze of God. But since we cannot find it, we seek the gaze of others. The world has become a mirror that tries to replace the face of the Creator. And each compliment is a new leaf trying to hide the nakedness of the soul. The problem is that the more we seek approval, the less peace we find. Because human perspectives change, but God's perspective remains. Those who applaud you today will forget you tomorrow, and the soul that depends on applause becomes a slave to the moment. An anxious heart is the price paid by those who live to be noticed. Perhaps that's why so many people seem strong but are always tired, because the burden of maintaining an image is greater than the burden of truth. God calls you to be real, not admired. He wants to see what's behind the filter, not what the filter shows. Authenticity is the altar where pride dies and grace is reborn. God still asks, "Where are you?" Not because He doesn't know, but because He wants you to see yourself. Healing begins when you admit where you went wrong, and it is in this recognition that love enters. Because God only transforms what is true. Love is permanence, approval is performance. Love embraces you as you are, approval measures you by how you appear. And that's why those who live in love grow, and those who live for approval get sick. The difference is simple. Love heals what applause only masks, and when you understand that, the world loses its power over you. Galatians 1:10 question: Am I now trying to win the approval of human beings or of God? That question cuts through the ego like a sword. Because deep down, we all want to be accepted, but we forget who should really approve of us. God doesn't analyze appearances, He searches hearts, and a sincere heart is worth more than 1,000 fake likes. To be loved is to be seen and accepted, even when you are wrong. To be approved is to be tolerated as long as you please. Love is light. Approval weighs heavily. Love builds trust. Approval requires effort. And when the effort ends, the false love ends too. Jesus was rejected by men, but approved by the Father. And that is the measure of every mature soul, to be faithful, even without applause. What the world calls failure, heaven calls faithfulness. Because God's love is not earned, it is received. And whoever understands this, finally rests. You don't need to prove anything to anyone. There is no contest for divine love. God isn't waiting for you to stand out. He's waiting for you to stop pretending. Because His love is not a note, it's a home. And those who return home never have to compete again. Applause is like fire. It warms you for a moment but consumes you if you get too close. Many began by serving God and ended up serving their own image. Vanity is subtle. It wears the clothing of devotion, but worships its own reflection. And without realizing it, the heart transforms "I do this for God" into "look at me." It's pride disguised as faith. Jesus warned, when you pray, go into your room and close the door. But the ego prefers the stage. He wants to be seen, praised, recognized. The Pharisee was praying loudly to be admired, and Jesus said, "You have already received your reward." Because whoever lives to be seen by the world becomes invisible to heaven. Applause is not a sin, but it can turn into idolization. When you need it to keep going, something is already wrong. God sometimes hides you not as punishment, but out of love. He knows that the stage is dangerous for those who still need it to feel alive. Anonymity is the school for those who will endure the calling. Every idol demands sacrifice. The idol of approval demands authenticity, and many have killed their essence to maintain their image. But God wants to destroy the altar of ego in order to rebuild the temple of truth, and when pride falls, love begins to breathe. Applause is not a blessing, it's a test. It reveals whether you still need to be seen or have already learned to be guided. Those who seek their own glory lose divine glory, but those who hide in God will be exalted in due time. A true servant is one who serves even when no one applauds. Pilate asked, "Are you not going to answer?" And Jesus, though innocent, remained silent. That silence was more powerful than 1,000 words. He wasn't trapped. He was in control. Those who live to please talk. Those who live to obey know when to be silent. The world demands explanations, but God demands trust. Jesus knew that by defending himself, he would lose his purpose, because there's no need to convince those who don't want to understand. Silence was his defense and his victory, and in the end, it was the silent one who saved the world. Approval is noisy, truth is silent. While men argue about status, God works in secret. Pride wants to prove itself. Humility simply lives. Jesus didn't need applause to be eternal, because those who fulfill their purpose don't need an audience. God still teaches through silence. If he has silenced you, it's because he is shaping you. The world doesn't understand the silence of the broken, but heaven knows that silence is the language of faith, and those who speak little to the world hear much from God. Jesus' silence was not cowardice, it was courage. He taught us that the greatest power is remaining faithful even when the world rejects you, and perhaps that is your calling today. To be silent in order to hear what the applause drowns out. Because sometimes, what God does in silence is worth more than what the world applauds aloud. Seeking approval is like wearing masks until you forget your own face. The soul, which was made to breathe freely, begins to suffocate under the disguise. We live trying to appear happy, spiritual, strong, when in reality we just want to be accepted. But the more we become what others expect, the less we are what God created us to be. The masks are comfortable at first, but become heavy over time. They promise protection, but they demand identification. And the heart, hidden for so long, begins to get lost amidst the conflicting versions. Have you noticed? With each compliment, a new layer is added, until one day the mirror no longer shows you, it shows the character that fear has created. But God doesn't heal masks, He heals hearts. Therefore, when He calls you, He doesn't call you based on what you show Him. It calls out what you try to hide. God's touch never reaches disguise, only what is true. And the first step to healing is allowing yourself to be seen as you are. The Bible says God opposes the proud but gives grace to the humble. Humility is not about diminishing yourself, it's about recognizing yourself. It means, "Sir, I don't need to pretend." It is in the recognition of weakness that power manifests itself. And all healing begins when appearance surrenders to authenticity. The world applauds characters, but heaven crowns truths. If God is taking you apart, it's because He truly wants to rebuild you. The process might hurt, but it's liberating. Because what is born from disguise dies in silence, but what is born of truth remains forever. There comes a point when the weariness of trying to please the world transforms into prayer, and the weary heart whispers, "Lord, I only want to please you." It is the beginning of freedom, when the soul exchanges the stage for secrecy, when the need to be seen gives way to the peace of being loved, and grace begins where effort ends. God doesn't want what you do to impress. He wants what you give in surrender. Divine approval doesn't come through achievements, it comes through surrender. "This is my beloved Son in whom I am well pleased." These words were spoken before Jesus performed any miracle. God approved of Him before the work was done, because love precedes the deed. You don't need to be noticed to be loved. God saw you before the world saw you. He already knew your heart before your story even began. His gaze is the only light that reveals without hurting, and whoever finds rest in that gaze finds peace where there was once anxiety. God's approval is silent, yet transformative. She doesn't come to applause. She comes to comfort. It's not made for likes. It's made on purpose. And when the heart understands this, fear is silenced. Because those who know they are loved no longer need to prove anything. You weren't born to impress the world. You were born to reflect heaven. And reflecting heaven isn't about shining brighter. It's about shining differently. Those who live for God don't need to be noticed, only faithful. And whoever is faithful in secret is remembered in eternity. True freedom begins when you discover that you no longer need to be seen in order to exist. You continue serving, loving, living, but now, in peace. The gaze of others ceases to be a prison and becomes merely a reflection, because what sustains you is no longer recognition, it's presence. And those who are sustained by God do not fear being forgotten. Not seeking approval isn't arrogance, it's maturity. It's understanding that being invisible to the world is sometimes the greatest compliment from heaven. God works with those who accept anonymity as part of the purpose. He silently nurtures what will one day blossom in public, and everything that is genuine is born far from the spotlight. A free soul is light. She doesn't need to explain anything, prove anything, show anything, just live. And this simplicity is the greatest testament to grace, because the peace of those who don't depend on applause is the most beautiful sound there is. Jesus called the meek blessed, not the popular ones. Blessed are those who mourn, not those who perform. Blessed are those who seek the kingdom, not recognition, because those who live for God never lose. They only grow stronger. And every human disapproval is a disguised, divine yes. To be invisible to the world is to be unforgettable to God. And it is in this exchange that the soul finds rest. Because his love doesn't need an audience, only surrender. And in the end, all the searching for approval dissolves into the certainty that he chose you first. And that is enough. And perhaps now you realize that the need to be approved is not a flaw, it's a misdirected love request. You just wanted to be seen, but you looked in the wrong eyes. And God patiently waited until the applause tired you out, to find you in silence. He doesn't reject you for seeking approval. He understands you, because he knows that the human heart gets lost trying to be loved. But when you understand that his gaze is enough, the fear of disappointment disappears, and the soul at last breathes. You don't need to be perfect to be accepted. You just need to be honest. God isn't waiting for your performance. He's waiting for your return. He wants to remind you that love isn't a prize, it's presence, and that the safest place in the world is to be who you are at his feet. God's love is not applause, it's shelter. It's not recognition, it's rest. He's not watching you, he's watching over you. And every time you try to deserve it, he whispers, "I've already chosen you." If this message spoke to your heart, subscribe to the channel and continue this journey with us. Here, each reflection is a mirror that brings you closer to your truth. And every time the world demands performance from you, remember, God doesn't want you to shine to be seen. He wants you to illuminate in order to transform. Because in the end, men's approval is only momentary, but God's life is eternal.